but there has been another mass shooting. Christy, to you.
Yeah, I'm Christy Paul. Victor, thank you. We went to sleep with the news of those 20 people dead in El Paso. You are waking up now. I am so sorry to tell you, to 9 more people who've been killed in a second mass shooting, this time Dayton, Ohio. Between these 2 shootings, please absorb this. 29 people are dead. 42 people are injured in a 15-hour time span and 2 mass shootings. We're going to get back to Victor in a moment, but want to get you the very latest on what's happening in Dayton right now. The assistant police chief there giving us an update just a short while ago on this overnight shooting. Here it is.
I'm Lieutenant Colonel Matt Carper, Assistant Chief of Police and Deputy Director of Dayton Police Department. Just after 1 o'clock this morning, we had an active shooter situation in the Oregon District, part of our downtown area in the 400 block of East 5th Street. We had 1 shooter that we are aware of and multiple victims. Right now, the shooter is deceased from gunshot wounds from the responding officers. We have 9 victims deceased in addition to that on East 5th Street, and we have approximately 16 more victims hospitalized right now in unknown conditions. Currently, we're working on identifying the suspect to see what the possible motivation might have been. We do not have that yet. Suspect was firing a long gun with multiple rounds at the victims. We are currently opening up the convention center, and in the convention center there will be resources, information for family members and friends if they have any questions about the status of anybody who might have been involved, or if they have information to provide. We have a dedicated phone line. I'll give you that number now. It's 225-6217, 225-6217. If anybody has information regarding this incident, or if they have questions about the status of their loved ones, please call that number. We currently have the FBI on scene. We are conducting the investigation. FBI is on scene as well to provide any necessary resources. Initially, we had obviously multiple jurisdictions responding to assist the Dayton Police Department in handling this incident. Fortunately, we had officers actually already on scene in the Oregon District providing patrol. This is a very safe part of downtown, and it's a very popular destination for visitors in the Oregon District. So we regularly have officers in the area. Fortunately, we had multiple officers in the immediate vicinity when this incident started. So there's a very short timeline of violence. For that, we're very fortunate. This is a very tragic incident, and we're doing everything we can to investigate it and try to identify the motivation behind this. With that, I can try to answer a few questions.
Do we know where this may have started? We heard it could have started around Ned Pepper's. Can you give us? Yeah,
I can tell you it started in the 400 block of East 5th Street, and this was all an exterior event. It was it all occurred outside.
Any description of the shooter you can share?
Not yet. The shooter is deceased, and we're still interviewing obviously a lot of witnesses as well as officers to try to determine if anybody else was involved.
What type of weapon was used?
It was a long gun.
And it was 1 shooter?
That we know of. That we know of right now. There's always a possibility that more people could have been involved, but that's what we're trying to identify right now.
Were any officers hurt during this?
No officers were injured.
What's the age range of the victims?
I can't tell you that right now. The coroner's office has a lot of resources on scene. Obviously, this is a very taxing event for resources, for the police department, the fire department, medics, coroner's office, but we have a lot of help from other agencies and organizations. Fire had mutual aid as well, so there were 21 medic units that responded to this incident.
Was it a Dayton police officer that took down the shooter?
Multiple Dayton police officers.
How much time elapsed between the time the shooting started and he was engaged by the officers?
I will be able to get you more information. We'll have a follow-up news briefing probably tomorrow. I can't give you an exact date and time, but it'll likely be late tomorrow where we can provide additional information. I can tell you this, it's a very short timeline of violence, very short.
And how long do you expect to be out on scene tonight?
Throughout the whole night and morning.
You said roughly 16 injured. Is that at least 16? As many as 16?
Yes, 9 dead, plus the suspect, so 10 dead on East 5th Street, and 16 that we are aware of hospitalized in unknown condition right now.
Jeff Likens, Dayton Fire, Deputy Fire Chief. We have set up a Family Assistance Center at the Dayton Convention Center. We'll give you a telephone number when we get that. That way family members can call to find out if their loved ones were involved and get a status of who was transported to which hospitals.
Is there any remaining threat to the public?
Not that we're aware of. The incident was resolved within a very short period of time, and the investigation will continue through the night, and we'll go wherever it leads us. Obviously, we're investigating the possibility of more people being involved. At this time, it looks like it might just be the one person.
After the shooting happened, I guess what was the protocol? Did first responders go to several bars to make sure people were okay? I guess what did y'all do after the shooting?
Yeah, the initial response was in any active shooter response, it's to respond directly to the threat itself, the immediate threat, and that was done within a very short period of time in this incident. After that, first aid was rendered to the many victims, and obviously first responders had a pretty busy evening tonight, but it was a county-wide request for assistance, so we had assistance from a lot of different jurisdictions in the area.
What's your message to the community after an event like this?
First is anybody with information, please give us a call at that dedicated line, or they can always call 333 COPS as well for additional information. But Dayton is a very safe area. The downtown Dayton is a very safe area. This is extremely unusual, obviously, for any community, let alone Dayton in our Oregon district. This is unheard of and very sad. It's a very tragic evening, and we have a lot of resources dedicated to take care of the victims' families, as well as identify any other people who might have been involved, or obviously the public will be very interested to know what the motivation might have been for such a horrific incident as this, and we're anxious to discover that as well.
How recently has Dayton Police trained for active shooting situations? Do you know that off the top of your head?
Yeah, Dayton Police Department trains regularly for active shooter. We actually have personnel within our department who train other departments nationally. So we've been training for active shooter for many, many years, and not just training the Dayton Police personnel, but other departments as well. So our people are very well trained for a situation like this, and we're very fortunate that the officers were in close proximity, and that they reacted the way they did. And as bad as this is, it could have been much, much worse, as I think everyone will become aware of here in the next, as more information unfolds. So we're very appreciative of the officers who were on scene and the action that they took. It's a very difficult, obviously a very difficult situation. They put themselves in harm's way, and that's what they're here for, to protect the public, and that's what they did tonight.
Do you know roughly how many shots were fired?
No.
Everybody good? Good. We'll come back.
Okay, thank you, and we will we'll give you more information on when we'll do a follow-up briefing, likely sometime late tomorrow, I suppose.
Okay.
Again, our thanks to Assistant Police Chief Lieutenant Colonel Matt Carper there as he was giving us a briefing of what happened at 1:22 in the morning, just a few hours ago, when they got the call that there had been an active shooting situation, or that there was an active shooting situation. Polo Sandoval with us now. This is in an area called the Oregon District. I understand it's an arts and an entertainment district, and we heard the assistant police chief there say this is very safe, this downtown is very safe, that this is unheard of.
Looking into the background of this area, Christy's been described as this thriving arts and entertainment district on a Saturday night. As you can imagine, it would be packed with people. There are various restaurants and bars in that area. It's an area that had recently experienced this urban rebirth or regrowth. So what we've been seeing here is police essentially concentrate and focus on this scene here, as we hear from the police authorities that they were initially called there to an active shooter situation, and now can confirm at least 9 people dead in addition to the shooter, as well as 16 people who have been taken to area hospitals where at this point their condition is unknown. The main focus right now, of course, now that the scene has been secured, is to try to establish a motive and to see exactly what has led to one of the nation's now latest shooting incidents here. It really does, the process and the procedure certainly does mirror what we witnessed in El Paso less than a day ago, where police initially responded. Once they were able to secure the scene, now we're essentially turning this active shooter situation now into an active homicide investigation, and that includes turning to federal authorities. We're told the FBI is already on scene. And then one more thing that also resembles what we unfortunately witnessed take place in Texas just a little while ago is now this push for information. You just heard from one of the police officials there on the ground now pleading with the public that if they saw anything, potentially shot any video of the situation, there to call that number that you see on the lower portion of your screen here, because they're essentially now trying to piece this investigation together, and now a very active scene that still continues after shots were fired in a very popular part of Dayton, Ohio at about 1 o'clock this morning. Christy. All
right, Polo Sandoval, we appreciate it so much. Thank you. I want to bring in Josh Campbell to talk to a CNN law enforcement analyst and former FBI supervisory special agent. You heard Polo there say, and the assistant police chief say, that the FBI is on scene. Talk to us about what is happening on the ground there.
Yeah, massive investigation right now underway in Dayton, Christie, involving multiple agencies. As we heard there from the police official talking about this mutual aid, that these departments will have agreements with other agencies that when you have an incident that happens, people surge to that location in order to respond, to protect life, in order to begin that investigation. As you mentioned, as Polo mentioned, the FBI now on the scene. They will bring a host of resources from the federal government, both forensic, different types of analysis, as well as being able to dig into this person's past whenever they are able to identify him. I have to tell you right now, this is a reality here now in America in 2019. We are on the scene right now of one mass shooting in Texas, reporting on another mass shooting that just happened in Ohio. And again, if you are a law enforcement agency anywhere around this country, you are now on high alert. In the span of just 2 weeks, we had an incident in California, here in Texas, and again is reporting now in Dayton. So again, this puts the burden on law enforcement agencies around the country. We don't know that these are all tied together, but again, you look at the time span, this condensed time frame, having multiple incidents. Again, this is a state of emergency, I would say, for law enforcement in the United States, trying to stop a copycat, again, trying to ensure the safety of their communities.
Believe, Josh, that it's very possible. We don't know for sure, we can't confirm anything, but that it is plausible that this is a copycat situation based on what we saw play out yesterday?
Yeah, it's hard to say right now this early. Again, we want to dig into first identifying the shooter. Now, the differences between these two incidents obviously come down to the shooter. Now, here in Texas, the shooter was taken into custody alive. Presumably, authorities were able to interview him and possibly gather information about his motive. It's going to be much more challenging for law enforcement officers in Dayton because the subject was deceased. Now, we don't know if the subject actually took his own life or if it was a fatal round from law enforcement that ultimately killed him, but nevertheless, you're dealing with the subject that they cannot interview. And so they're going to have to, again, bring in these resources to first identify him and then move out. You want to orbit this subject, again, to dig into his life and figure out who this person was.
And determine once and for all that he was indeed acting alone, because that's something that they're still looking at as well, as to whether there's anybody else involved. Josh Campbell, so appreciate your insight. Thank you so much. Again, I hate to give you this news as you wake up early on this Sunday morning. 29 people total are dead today. 42 people are injured. That is 71 families that are changed this morning in a span of 15 hours because they lost somebody they love in a mass shooting. We are back with more on the Dayton, Ohio massacre.
I'm Victor Blackwell, live here in El Paso, Texas. This has been a tragic 13 hours of bloodshed, a 29 people killed in a matter of just a few hours, 42 injured. Let me first tell you about what happened here. 20 people killed, 26 injured here in El Paso when a man from Allen, Texas, 10 hours away, came here with a long rifle, we're told, and just started shooting people. That investigation continues. We're told by police that he is speaking with them. Now, this is a very active scene behind me. The investigation has continued from the moment that the first officer arrived, 6 minutes after that call came in. But we also know that those who lost their lives here, that they're still inside this Walmart. This is a massive scene. Let me now take you to Dayton, where 9 people were killed overnight. In the interim, in coming here and covering this story, we've seen now what has happened in Ohio. Let's get the latest on what happened there and bring in Deb Decker. She is the PIO for the Montgomery County Emergency Services. Deb, thank you for being with us this morning. First, give us the latest on what is happening there with that investigation right now.
Well, as you know, the shooting began at a place in the Oregon district, which is a very popular district here in Dayton, downtown Dayton. Shooting began around Blind Bob's, and the shooter, one person wearing body armor, carrying an assault rifle, began shooting and making their way toward a place called Ned Pepper's. And a guy from Ned Pepper's ended up grabbing the barrel of the gun, and so the shooter picked up a handgun and was going to continue shooting. However, the police arrived and shot the man dead there. So far, including the shooter, there are 10 dead. We're looking at about at least 16 wounded. And that's the extent of what I know.
The last number we got was 9. You're now saying there are 10 dead in this shooting in Ohio?
Yes, there are 10 dead, and that includes the shooter.
Oh, including the shooter. Okay. This investigation, tell us what is happening there at this moment. I imagine that it's shut down, that there's a large scene there. Give us an idea of what's happening right now.
Well, as you said, it is shut down. The investigation is still going on. The police have marked off the areas in the Oregon district that they're keeping people out of as they do their investigation. We've got the convention center is set up for people that have questions or are trying to find someone or need more information about possible loved ones that were in the area at the time. And we are here responding at Montgomery County and waiting for the investigators to do what they need to do in order to bring peace to these families.
The 16 injured, do you know if those are all gunshot victims as well, if those 16 were all shot?
You know, I do not know that at this point.
Okay. Is there any idea, and I know this is very early on, of a motive? Potentially, did this man say anything? Are you hearing from people there?
I've heard nothing about a motive, no.
Okay. All right. I understand that you're asking people to come forward with information, any pictures, video. Talk to us about that.
Assess the scene and get people the treatment they need.
Can you give us a clear idea of the Oregon district and what that is?
It's just a part of the. It's more of an upscale part of the downtown area. It's a nice place. It's got good restaurants and shopping and things like that. And it's not far. It's off 5th Street in downtown Dayton.
Have those victims
where a lot of people go.
I'm sorry, there's a bit of a delay, so if you hear me jump in, it's because there's a delay. I'm not cutting you off. But do you know if in what happened there in Dayton that the victims, have they been removed from the scene?
As far as I know, yes. Everybody is getting treatment.
Okay, Deb Decker, the
PIO is getting treatment.
All right, PIO with Montgomery County Emergency Services there in Ohio. The second of 2 mass shootings in just a matter of 13 hours. Deb, thank you so much. I will continue our coverage here live from El Paso, where there is an active investigation at this Walmart. Stay with us. Breaking news comes in El Paso, Texas, where in 13 hours, 29 people have been killed, more than 40 injured. We've got some live pictures here from Dayton, Ohio. This is the scene of, unfortunately, the latest mass shooting. We're told 9 people have been killed at this scene, 16 injured. We're told that the suspect, the shooter in this case, has been taken down police. He also is dead. I have with us Josh Campbell, CNN law enforcement analyst. And Josh, we've got 2 very different scenes here, right? Here in El Paso, this was a Saturday morning, families, it was a department store. When we go to Ohio, that is 1 in the morning, probably loud music, some people drinking, a very different response from police. Walk us through first in Ohio how law enforcement approaches that scene.
Yeah, absolutely. 2 different characteristics with these 2 scenes. And first, just at the outset, I mean, how unbelievable it is we're standing here at a crime scene talking about another mass shooting at a different scene. It's just unbelievable. As you mentioned, there are different characteristics, first of which being the shooter and how the shooters were taken down. Here, we know that the suspect was taken into custody by law enforcement. He's alive. Presumably, they can question him. They can glean information from him. A much different story over in Ohio, where you have the shooter that's now deceased. Obviously, it's much more difficult for law enforcement officers to try to gather information about him to get to that motive. They'll have to, bring in those resources to dig into people that were in his past and his social media, anything that may help them glean those details. That's going to be important, a much more difficult job. But as you mentioned, there's a similarity in time frame here. This is a condensed time frame where you have one right after the other, but different settings. Again, we don't yet know of this shooting here in Texas, why the subject traveled the 650 miles from Allen, Texas, where he's from, to this border city to conduct that attack. Obviously, we've been reporting on this manifesto that authorities are looking into to try to determine, was this person radicalized by some kind of hateful ideology? There's that piece. We don't yet have those same kind of clues with the Dayton shooting underway right now because it's so early in the stages of that investigation. We're just now learning the details about the victim and the method that the attack went down and the method the shooter was taken down. We don't yet have those granular details about that shooter. So it's hard to compare them, but there are a lot of differences, as you mentioned.
Yeah, we're starting to get the information about Dayton, but what we learned about here in El Paso is that obviously what happened in the parking lot and inside, that's a department store. You can hear those gunshots. I remember from Pulse, we've covered so many of these now, that if there's loud music, sometimes when you hear the gunshots, you don't know if those are exactly what it is, if those are gunshots. What's the response like to going into a bar, into an entertainment district for police?
Yeah, so if you're a patron at one of these locations, either the store behind us here, the Walmart where the shooting went down, or a bar, again, if you're inside a Walmart and you hear gunfire, the sounds, something that's incongruous with, the normal setting, obviously you're going to take notice. As you mentioned, in a bar where you might have loud music, you factor in possibly the alcohol, people having a good time, maybe a delayed response there. It's much more different. Now, I can tell you from law enforcement perspective, the response from them is going to be the same. When you get reports that there's a shooting or that there's gunfire, you're going to go in, you're going to go to the sound of the guns, you're going to try to disrupt any threat that might be underway. Here we know the response time was very short, with law enforcement officers here arriving on scene in short order, taking the suspect into custody without firing a shot. Different in Dayton. We're told by the law enforcement chief that we just heard from earlier that the police engaged the subject, so we don't yet know what that response time was, but he did mention that authorities were in the area. This was a highly trafficked area. So again, just the differences, the similarities, it's striking. And again, as I mentioned here, we're sitting here trying to keep straight two different shootings in our minds that happened within the span of just a few hours.
Josh, it was remarkable, sadly, that we were coming here and covering two major shootings in a week.
Yeah.
Now there are two in a weekend.
Yeah.
From your perspective in law enforcement, when you consider that we're standing here at one mass shooting covering another, what goes through your mind?
Well, I think if you are a law enforcement official in any department across the country right now, you are now on high alert. Obviously, the information sharing in this new age is very rapid. You have law enforcement departments across the country that take note of different incidents. We heard yesterday, for example, the NYPD was monitoring this situation as they do with any incidents to see, okay, do we need to protect our facilities in and around the area? Now you can bet that any department in this country is now going to be on high alert because we don't yet know if the attack that happened in Dayton was a copycat style attack that followed this attack. Again, a lot of times these people want notoriety. You just don't know what motivates them. But again, I think I would consider this an emergency right now for law enforcement in the United States, because you back up just the last week, we were in California covering another shooting. In the span of 2 weeks, 3 mass shootings in the United States. If you're a department that's charged with protecting your community, you're now on high alert.
Josh Campbell with us all morning. Again, here in El Paso, this investigation is going on right behind us. A massive scene. Of course, it takes a lot of time when you're considering the space of a Walmart supercenter. Unfortunately, the victims, their bodies still inside as investigators look for every shell, every potential piece of evidence in what will be a prosecution, because we know that the suspect in El Paso is speaking with investigators. Did not turn himself in, but was taken into custody without incident. Now, there's also what's happening in Dayton, Ohio, where there are 9 killed, 16 who were injured, and the crime scene that is expansive there as well. We will cover both of those here as CNN's breaking news coverage continues.
At T-Mobile, for $40 a line for 4 lines, it's all included for the whole family, like unlimited with Netflix on us.
29 people killed in a matter of 13 hours, more than 40 injured. I'm standing here where a man came in with a long gun and shot, killed 20 people, 26 injured. But overnight, another shooting, this time in Dayton, Ohio. 9 people killed there, 16 injured. And we know the shooter in that case was killed by police. Let's go now to Elizabeth Long with Kettering Medical Center. Elizabeth, thank you for speaking with us this morning. First, of those 16 injured, how many are at your facility, at your hospital?
Well, good morning. And we had a total of 13 patients at 3 of the hospitals in the Kettering Health Network. At one of our hospitals, we had 9 people come in, mainly gunshots to lower extremities. One was shot in the abdomen. So I have not gotten information from the other hospitals. I do know at one of the hospitals we had at least 2 people who were treated and released. So, and that's us. I think I'm not sure on the total number. That number might be growing. I don't know. You'd probably need to confirm with police, but I think it's some people. We've had some people who walked in at a later time and went to hospitals that were far away from the Oregon district. So I think the number of injured it might be rising.
And Elizabeth, you make a good point here, and I want to make sure our viewers know this, and by now you do, because we've been here before, right? In the aftermath, in the first few hours after a mass shooting, those numbers will fluctuate. The number of those initially reported who are injured, those who indeed are deceased as well, those numbers will change in that fog immediately after a shooting like this. So thank you for pointing that out, Elizabeth. You talked about one person at least being shot in the abdomen. Do do you have a number of those who are facing life-threatening injuries?
I do not. I know that at one of our hospitals where I did get information, one person is in serious condition and 8 people are in fair condition.
Okay, 8 people in fair condition. Is there an age range that you have?
I have not been able to get that yet. Of course, you know, immediately the first few hours after an incident such as this, our hospitals are focused on caring for the patients. So I am slowly making contact with them, working with them to get this information.
Do you know if there is anyone in surgery right now?
I know at least 2 people were taken to surgery in one of our hospitals.
Okay, so at least 2 people in surgery. Are you expecting more to come in? I mean, we know that the investigation's still active at the Oregon district there in Dayton. Are you expecting more people to come in?
You know, that's hard to say. Again, I think that after the initial shock wears off, and I was involved in a horrific incident. I was in New York when that car a couple years ago drove up onto the sidewalk and just started to plow through for several blocks. So knowing you're kind of in shock after a while, and then you're looking to see 2 other people, and then you start to say, hey, something may have happened to me. So I think that could be what is happening. I was told that one person did go into one of our hospitals later on after someone suggested that person go in and get treated.
All right, Elizabeth Long with Kettering Medical Center, where we know that several of the thus far 16 injured in this shooting in Dayton have gone. 1 person shot in the abdomen, 2 treated and released, and 2 people at least taken into surgery. Elizabeth, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
And we will continue our breaking news coverage, not only of what is happening in Dayton, but what happened here in El Paso. 2 active investigations after 29 people were killed, gunshot wounds across the...
What we need to talk about this morning, in a 13-hour span, we've had 29 people who have died, 42 actually, who have been injured in 2 mass shootings. El Paso, yesterday at 10:39 Central, overnight at 1:22, somebody, a suspect, started shooting in the Oregon district of Dayton, Ohio. It's an arts and entertainment area. You can imagine on a Saturday night, people were still out and about. And there was one man, Isaac Johnson, who was near the pub where this second mass shooting took place. 9 people died. 16 are in hospitals. You're going to see here Isaac's video that he took as it was happening. Let's watch.
Oh. Dude, what the? What the?
Gives you a sense of what was going on. I'm sure that what struck you might have been the same thing that struck me. You heard the gunshots initially. They weren't coming out fast and furious, and then all of a sudden there was a barrage of guns going off. We know that according to the PIO of Montgomery County, that the suspect was shot by authorities. The assistant police chief there, Lieutenant Colonel Matt Carper, said they do not know who fired the deadly shot to kill the suspect, but we know that he was shot by multiple authorities. I want to bring in Isaac Johnson now, who had shot that video. Isaac, so I understand you were near the pub. We heard your reaction when you started to process what was going on. Help us understand what was going through your mind, what you were feeling when you first heard those gunshots.
I'll be honest. I didn't really know at first because I take my girlfriend to work and pick her up on the weekends, usually there. And there's always nice motorcycles and cars, so I take videos. And I was kind of sitting there waiting for one, and I heard a pop, and I kind of thought maybe they were doing fireworks or something. Just like there was just one or two right before I started the video. And then it was like 3 or 4, and I kind of, like, fireworks are timed to be, like, specifically, like, 5 seconds or 3 seconds apart or right back to back, and those were just spaced out uneven. So I was like, excuse my profanity and that, but yeah, I was like, what's going on? And then I saw people start running, and cars just started coming out of the intersection, like, recklessly. I was just confused, really. I didn't even get out of the car because I was just sitting there, like, watching everything happen.
I saw the window going up and down. Did you get the sense that, were you trying to protect yourself in that moment?
I don't really know. I think I was going to get, like, I was thinking since it's gunshots, I should go inside. And then I was, at the same time, I was looking at my phone, and I was like, well, I need to record this. So I don't know. I just, like, was sitting there deciding if I needed to roll my window down to see what was happening or if I needed to get out and go inside.
Isaac, is your girlfriend okay?
Yeah, she is, thankfully.
Was she in front of or in the building near where this happened?
No, she's actually at work at the Dublin pub, and I know there was a couple that came in, and the woman was, she was, like, extremely in shock. They were in meds, and I guess she said that they heard a couple shots and people rushed the door and they just all dropped, and then another one of her coworkers was at a nearby restaurant or bar or something. She heard a few shots and everyone there was, like, diving on the ground, hitting the bar, and she was, I mean, I experienced nothing. Like, I was like the car pretty much. Nobody was paying attention to me. I was just there kind of, and it was just crazy.
So, Isaac, we see through your video that you got out of the car. What happened after that?
I actually walked up to the door, and I was about to go inside, and then I started looking back because I was just kind of confused. I was like, I don't know. I didn't know if like, because it stopped, so I was like, I didn't know. Like, I could tell. It sounded to me like there's a few guns. Like, one gun doesn't fire that fast, obviously. I don't know if there was cops already, like, on the street or what, but.
Did you see? We saw the people running in your video. Did you talk to anybody before you got back in your car?
No, I didn't. I just sat and I kind of just heard the people across the room, and I know, like, I wasn't really trying to, like, eavesdrop, but I could just kind of see by how she was talking. She was, like, putting her hands over her head and, like, I don't know. I heard her when she came in and she saw someone get shot. I already knew that, so I was just kind of, by how many shots is what it was, that's all I was wondering. I didn't want to ask, like, did you see?
Sure.
I didn't want to ask any questions, you know what I mean? But that's a little excessive, if you ask me. That's so crazy. That's just insane.
Isaac, we're glad that you're okay. We're glad that your girlfriend is okay. Thank you for sharing that video with us.
No problem.
And with our viewers.
Everyone's praise for Dayton and the United States right now, no matter what.
Absolutely. We're glad that you're okay. We're so sorry for what this community is going through. But thank you for taking the time to talk to us this morning. I know it's been a rough night for you, so please take good care of yourself and each other.
Absolutely. You too. Thank you.
Absolutely. We'll be right back.
Shootings in America in